I've got a couple of old Polaroid cameras here, and I wanted to show you a modification I've been doing. What's cool about these old cameras is they're real solid, and there's a lot of room in there if you want to do modifications. So I have this project where I'm converting this into basically a digital camera, because I'm going to have a Raspberry Pi as the brains. The Raspberry Pi has a camera, and then I can send that image onto an e-ink display and then print it out with a receipt printer. And what I'm hoping is all of that can fit inside one of these. So I've got two here because this one I've already stripped the guts out of. So I kind of want to do a before and after. So here's the before. And what you see here is there's on the inside, crack this thing open. On this side, there's a bunch of rollers. And in here's the parts of the camera that control the shutter and aperture and all that. So it's a little bit of a pain to strip all this out. But what you have to do is, on this one, there are actually screws on the inside here, so you could pull this front off. And, you know, it just takes some pressure and pounding on these things to get actually the guts stripped away. But here's kind of what it looks like before. These aren't exact models. And I actually like the look of this one called a Big Swinger. But I was a little afraid to destroy it because it still looks pretty good on my shelf. So I'm going to keep this guy and then use this for the modification. So let me show you that. So I've taken the lens apart, and they don't use really high quality lenses on these Polaroids. It is really a plastic lens. So in order to get that out, I actually drilled in with a drill bit and then just pried on it until I could get the lens out. I can't have that glass in there because when I have the Raspberry Pi going with this lens, I don't want any glass interfering with the image. So the Raspberry Pi camera will just sit right in there. I have to double check that the edges of this don't affect the picture. If that becomes a problem, I'm going to have to do some more modification on this. I mean, this is really just for aesthetics at this point, because once it's put together, I still want it to look like a Polaroid camera. So you can imagine without that on there, it just takes away. It's not critical, but I like the way it looks. So that's the lens. Going one layer deeper is this front plate. Again, this is basically for aesthetics because I'm not going to be using this. The lens is going to sit behind it on this plate. So if you look at this plate, what you'd normally see is just a lot of electronics and shutter mechanisms on top of this. So I've ripped all that off. So I'm exposed to just the plastic. And there's a nice flat edge here where I'm going to place the Raspberry Pi camera board. And then now we're down to the case. You can see a little damage here because in order to get this off, you kind of got to pound on it. My screws were rusted, so I couldn't actually unscrew it without damaging it. But I mean, I just super glued it back together, and it's going to be fine. So that's the front side. Going to the back. Open this up. Here's where you can see what I was talking about on that other camera. I stripped out the rollers here, and then I stripped out the parts that were right there. And so now I'm essentially down to just the case, which is what I want. And you get a sense for how much room is in there. And I've got a lot to pack in. So if this receipt printer, you can see it almost fits in there. It's just a little tight. So what I plan on doing is cutting a corner off of this, maybe on both sides, just to give me enough room so that this receipt printer will sit all the way back down in there. And what I'm hoping to do is on the back side, that's where my display is going to sit. So you can imagine a picture right there. And then there's just enough room below, I'm hoping, that this receipt printer, the receipt will spit out just right below the display. And this is a 4.2-inch wave share e-ink display. And you can see right here where the cord is going to connect. So this connection will happen right there. There's actually a hole already in this Polaroid camera. I'm expecting that wire to go off here and come right into the camera there. And then on the inside, that's where, you can see it's going to be tight, but I've got the Raspberry Pi here that's going to fit probably right on top. And then this receipt printer there, just enough room. I'm going to make a cut here on the front, probably so that Raspberry Pi just has a little bit more room to sit up in there. And then I've also got, in order to control this camera, just an old Super NES controller. And I've already sort of got that programmed to do the camera functions that I want. Still a little bit of work to do there, but the idea is once this is all put together, that controller, this Polaroid had a, I don't know if it was a flash connection or something here, but there's a little space, a hole already, where that's where I'm expecting this USB cord for the controller to sit. And essentially it's just be that one cord coming out. And yeah, once it's all said and done, oh, and then we got power to worry about. So power's a little tricky because I've got two batteries. This big one is what I'm planning to power the Raspberry Pi with. It's probably a bit of overkill. I might find a smaller battery for that. But then this other battery is what is going to power the thermal receipt printer. And I haven't experimented with that yet. I'm hoping that's enough power. I think it's was a 7-watt battery. When it's plugged into the wall, it's getting 5 watts. And the image that I get is a bit gray. You can see some test images here. So I'm hoping with a little bit more power, I'm going to get crisper images. So that's it for this at this point. I'll follow up once I've got the actual camera built so you can see how it turns out. But all right, I have a demo here set up, and what you're looking at here is 4 different things. First, we got the camera. The camera's going to take a picture. That picture is going to go to the e-ink display, and then from there I'll be able to print to this receipt printer, and all that's going to happen with this controller here that's controlling this Raspberry Pi. So to start out, let me take a picture. Point this at myself here. All right, that should send a picture to the e-ink display. You can see that's coming through there. And then now we're going to print it. So I have the B button set up for that. advance the paper a little bit. This was all powered, it's plugged in, but the next test I'm going to do is with a battery. I'm going to have two batteries. One battery powering the printer, and then the other battery will be powering the Raspberry Pi. Alright, I'm back with another test. This time it's all going to be powered by battery. And again, what you're looking at here is a 4.2 inch e-paper e-ink display. You've got the camera connected to the Raspberry Pi. You have a thermal receipt printer, and then you have a controller. And I've set this up so that the A button will take a picture, the B button will print. And you'll notice this big pink reddish box here, that's the battery that's powering the Raspberry Pi. And then powering the printer is a battery. That battery's wired straight up to the thermal printer. And should be set up here, so I'm gonna do the test. So first we're gonna take the picture. So let me smile for the camera. Alright, so that A button took the picture. That picture is gonna get sent to the display. That looks good. And then the B button should send it to the thermal printer. And while we're waiting for that to print out, what's interesting is this battery puts out a little bit more power than I was getting from being plugged right into the wall. And what that does is it powers the printer better, and I'm getting a darker image. So for comparison, here's an image that was taken plugged directly into the wall. And here's that same image printed out with it being powered by the battery. And the battery I'm using, let's see if I can find the info. You can see it says 7.4 volts, 850 milliamps, 6.25 watts. And let me advance that a little bit. You can see successful test. Still working on, you can see the banding that happens. So every time that printer advances, it's got a limited amount of memory, so it has to stop every so often and load the next batch of pixels. And I'm going to be working to see if I can maybe minimize that, but I'm not sure if that's going to be possible. Alright, I got this all connected. I'm going to run a test. Let's get this going. I'm going to turn it on. And I'll point out a few things here. I've got the HDMI cable connected to the front. That's going to my monitor. I've got the USB plugged into the keyboard. And then normally that's where the controller is plugged in, but the controller is plugged in through the keyboard. So that's how I'm going to connect there. And then I've got the power coming from the wall. And then this is the power for the printer. So that's plugged into the wall as well. So give this a second. You can see the e-paper. It's grabbing the most recent photo that I've taken. It's a little hard to tell what that is. I think we're set up here, so let me try to take a picture. I'm gonna take a selfie here. You can see the selfie with that cord blocking my face, but that's okay. And then do a test print. again. It's interesting, this is actually my first test with a different wall plug. I switched from 5 volts to 9 volts, thinking that would give me a little clearer picture. And it actually looks like it's slightly worse, so I might switch back to 5 volt. Let me do that real quick. Let's see what we get with that. Yeah, it's interesting, you get different results based on the power. You can see we got a lot more ink out of that one. Actually, the clearest picture I'm getting off of the battery. Let me give you another test here. I'm going to show a different image. All right, let's print that one. And you can see that one prints a lot clearer. All right, I've got my camera taken apart here, and before I stuff everything back in, I thought I'd take a chance and show you how I did all this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of point out some things as I go. We'll start on the back here. Got the e-paper display. You can see the ribbon goes in through this hole here. That's a hole that was already in this camera, as well as that's where I'm going to connect my power. So you might also notice that's where the receipt is going to be spit out. There's a little serrated edge that I can use to tear the paper off there. And then opening up the back, you can see the Raspberry Pi. And that Raspberry Pi just sits on the top of the camera, and then this receipt printer is going to just slide in like that. Point out a couple things on this receipt printer. I've got a battery. That battery is only powering the receipt printer, and I'm going to be doing a lot of experimenting, so I don't want to always have it plugged into the battery. I'd like to sometimes plug it into just a wall outlet. So a couple things here. One is I'm going to have this charge cable, so I can recharge that battery, and you know, I don't want to have to pull this whole printer out just to access that charging port. So that's where this USB cable comes in. And then the power, that's this cord here. You can see, again, I'm going to have access to this from the outside. So if I want to run it off the battery, this is the battery power. I can plug it into the battery. Or if I want to run it off external power, I've got this cord here, which is plugged into the wall. So I could plug that in there. So that's the receipt printer. And then I'll point out some of the things on this Raspberry Pi. So you can see, first up is the power. That's the power that's coming in from the outside. Right behind that power is the HDMI. Probably can't see that. Let me see if I can get that a little closer. There's an HDMI cable that goes through here down and actually comes out the front of that camera. Let me show you the front here. So right here, that's the HDMI. Obviously, I'm only going to use that if I'm connecting into a monitor. Most of the time, I won't need that, but if I ever need to troubleshoot, I can plug that in and see what's going on. While I'm on the front here, this is the USB input, and there's a little L bracket there that gives me just enough space to, and it redirects it right out the side. There's a hole on my cover here. So when that cover's on, I can have access to that USB. And that USB is what my controller is going off of. The other thing to point out on the front here is with the camera, the ribbon, there's a little hole right there that comes through on the other side to connect that ribbon to the Raspberry Pi. So back inside, a couple other things to point out. So to make room for the cable that's controlling the e-paper, that's why these cables are connected here. So space is so tight that the cable that came with the e-paper was about 1/4 of an inch taller than this connector, and it would actually hit the receipt printer. So I connected that in with a wire that was a little shorter, just that extra 1/4 of an inch is what allowed that to fit. So on the pins here, I've got the e-paper display, which is this group of cables. This black, yellow, and green cable, that's going to the printer. And then all the way back is there's 2 wires that power a little buzzer. Probably can't see that buzzer, but that's going to give me a little bit of audio output as I'm clicking the buttons on the SNES controller. You can see the camera cable comes through. It's got a twist before it connects into the Raspberry Pi. All right, and so that's the tour. I thought I'd give you that while I've got it ripped open, and then now I'm gonna put it all back together so you can see how everything fits in there once it's done. So take this. So it's a tangle of cords for sure. So this is the printer power. And the charger I want to come off to the right. So I'm gonna just bring this through. Oh, got a tangle here. so again, we got power right here for the receipt printer, which would connect to this. This is going into the back of the printer. This is the battery. So kind of fold this cord up here. And then if I need to recharge that battery, that's this USB cord. So again, fold this up a little bit so it'll fit. And this can just sit in there like that. And then when this is closed, this paper feeds right through the front. Close that up. Let's see, we got our HDMI. USB, HDMI camera, everything's connected. Probably switch this up to be Velcro instead of rubber band at some point. There we go.